Hello, everybody. Welcome to WD Carousel of Podcast. My name's Crystal.
I'm Ian.
And Ian looks scared.
I'm a little bit scared.
I don't know why.
These are those moments that you should really be watching us in crisp 1080p on YouTube because it's all of our faces are phenomenal.
All of our faces. All
two of them.
All two
usually.
of them.
Yeah. Anyway.
Hard stop. Let's move on.
Let's move on.
So we are going to be doing another classic Disney movie I made Ian watch.
Yes.
Let's see how much he remembers, and it'll remind you how much you remember, and then just go over some fun facts and stuff. Yeah. We are talking about The Sword in the Stone.
Sure, not The Sword and the Stone, which I had almost typed. It's fine.
Because, there's a sword, and then there's a stone, and they're right next to each other, and they're best buds.
They're just really
and this is the plot to Toy Story, just done in the medieval times.
It's basically just like the Emperor's New Groove. It's like they're buds, and they have this whole thing going. Anyway, it's fine.
Eartha Kitt shows up.
Yeah, right. Eartha Kitt shows up. Yeah.
So, okay, fun part for me. Okay, Ian, are you ready for this? I mean, we have been talking about it a bit, so I'm guessing that your memory is going to be
directly, so we should be okay.
Jerked a bit. But what is the sword in
and the stone? Now I'm gonna break everybody. I'm so sorry. Sword in the Stone. So, I mean, it's obviously the classic tale of King Arthur and Excalibur. So it's that, but it kind of meanders in a weird way, which I wasn't really expecting it to meander the way it did. But literally, you've got
plot right now.
Plot. I mean, like literally, you've got like Wart. So who's Arthur? They call him Wart. Is this guy? He's this kid who is in a. He's like gonna be the squire for like a knight who's a training knight who wants to be the king. Well, this whole thing, and he runs into Merlin, or literally falls into Merlin's house somehow, and he goes in, and Merlin was expecting him because he knows that there's something special about him, and there's a talking owl named Archimedes who's also there, and who's like a sass master, and I absolutely loved Archimedes because he was just the freaking sass master, and so we just watched this.
We did just watch this.
It's so forgettable. I'm so sorry. That's terrible. So Wart, starts learning stuff, or he starts talking to Merlin, and Merlin kind of wants to train him because I think Merlin wants him to be king, or expects more of him. Like, it's kind of not. There's not a lot of in the way I saw it. There wasn't a lot of like explanation as to like that jumping point from like him. Like Merlin sees something in him, and he comes in. The person I need to see is here, and now you're the person that fell in. So I need you to be the person who is going to be the king or something. I don't know if that was ever like obvious according to the storyline that he was supposed to be king, but that was what I was inferring. Anyway, so he goes back and tries to be training as a squire for what's his name, the cranky one, and his dad or whatever, and he goes in and but he's also trying to train under Merlin at the same time, and Merlin's lessons are increasingly weird. The first one was underwater, or was that I think the first one was underwater, and so he becomes a fish because of course. And so he's a fish, and then they go on this herring adventure for some reason, and I think it was just supposed to be character building, but it felt sort of expositional. I was a little bit like, what are we learning here? But then, of course, he ends up being late to get back to his duties as the squire, so he's in trouble there. And then Merlin comes back and is like, we need to do more stuff, and he's like, but I can't. I'm supposed to be a squire. And so he's like, we'll just make the magic do the dishes, and so then that starts happening and all of that. And then they go and do the second thing, which is he makes them into squirrels. Because, that's a thing. And in a bizarre twist of the storyline, a squirrel falls in love with Wart. Because, I mean, it was pretty cute, but it was like cute as like a short film, like it was kind of its own, like it had its own arc. It was like its own little story that like I remember that could have been like its own separate like 10-minute short film. It was very strange. The whole thing was very strange. But so then they all end up getting chased around by the wolf, and the lady squirrel ends up saving his life, and then she discovers that he's actually a human, and she was heartbroken, and it was like actually kind of sad, and I was like, why is this so sad? This is really strange. But anyway, so it's a nice little cute little powerful moment. Anyway, moving on. So they do that, and then I think he flies. I can't remember which order that happens, but then he goes back and gets in trouble again, and then Merlin takes him back again, and then he becomes a bird. And there's a whole sequence with the bird, but I don't remember the entirety of that. I can't remember. He and Archimedes fly for a while, and then something perilous happens that I don't remember now. And he eventually gets back to it, and then he discovers that when he gets back to the thing, the guy he's trained to be a squire for is going to go joust, try to be the king, and he decides that he's excited to do that, and Merlin gets mad and goes to Bermuda and becomes a rocket, and that was surprising. And so then he's gonna go do that. They go to they went to London, or they went to a bigger city, and at that point he starts the jousting competition. He's watching it with the other guy, and he discovers that there's a sword fighting component. Like, he thought it was just the jousting component. There's like a sword fighting component, and he had forgotten the sword for his person he's being a squire for in the inn. And so he is like, oh crap, I have to go grab it. So he goes to go grab it, and the inn's closed because everyone's watching the jousting thing. So he's all freaked out. He's like, wait, there's a sword over in this anvil thing just sitting in the middle of town. Let me just grab it. So he grabs it with like the angels singing, and it was it's like you just keep walking up to it, and they start doing it again. It was a lot of fun. And then he grabs it, brings it back, and everyone's like, "What? You got Excalibur?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, what this? Yeah." And then it's a thing, and then he becomes king. And then it kind of is just like Merlin comes back, and it was like, "Good for you, kid." And then that's kind of sort of how it ended a little bit. I don't remember the very end, but I remember it being kind of wrapping up in a way that felt very like abrupt. That's all I remember.
Okay.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Not bad. Except for you missed my favorite character of the entire movie.
Yeah. Well, yes. It was the bird part. That was the thing. I know there's a big chunk of the bird part that was like missing in my brain. Mad Madam Mim, because she was like the only like, I guess, bad character, but like she was more delightful than bad anyway. So like I kind of forgot about her being the bad character, but she was a hecking delight. She basically was just like so gleefully evil that you just almost couldn't even be mad about it. Like it was, and then that was the other part. Is the other big component to that was she and Merlin had like apparently some sort of ongoing animosity, and they had this like giant wizarding duel where they had like transformed into different animals, and it was like it was a lot. Like that was actually like a fairly intense sequence, and like that was like how the movie felt to me in general. Was there was like a lot of these like really amazing sequences all just kind of pulled together by like one frame story that didn't feel like it always accommodated everything in the same way. So like and now that you mentioned it, like that scene where they did like their wizard duel thing stuck out in my mind now that I'm remembering all of that.
Didn't stick out the first time, even though we just talked about something like
everything. Yeah. And the whole squirrel sequence stuck out in my mind. But other than that, like it was kind of a bunch of different kind of moments, like really cool bits that were all kind of stuck together by the glue that was the actual story. That was my thought process behind it. So
Sword in the Stone is the story of Arthur as like a 10 or 12-year-old, and he's being fostered by, as you said, older gentleman and his son who wants to be a knight.
Yes.
And who is knighted somewhere along the process, but
right.
He just kind of was like, hey, he's knighted, good job.
I'm a knight now, hey.
And Arthur, also nicknamed Wart, is following that older soon-to-be knight into the woods to go hunting, and he accidentally falls when the older soon to be knight, is trying to shoot for a deer, losing the
Oh,
arrow.
yeah,
He's like,
yeah,
I'm gonna go get that arrow. In the meantime, Merlin is like, I know someone important's coming. I'm not quite sure who he is, but I know what he looks like. And Merlin can kind of see the future. You hear lots of different things about modern technology occasionally, indoor plumbing, and you know, that sort of thing. So he has some idea about the future, but not 100%. Like you said, he knew exactly where he was going to drop in. He knew he was important, so he literally packed up his entire house and followed Wart back to the castle where he is being fostered. The reason that he is able to stay in the castle is because the people that live there realize that he is a wizard and they are afraid that he is going to curse them.
Yes.
So they give him this creaky old tower up top. And Merlin, with his one-track mind of deciding to teach Wart how to be intellectual and use brain more than brawn, it takes him through multiple different journeys. Like you said, the fish first, but something happens. Something always happens to Merlin, where all of a sudden he's not able to assist when something big happens, like the barracuda that comes out of nowhere and tries to eat Wart.
Now, I will say, I don't think any of that was accidental, but that's just my own personal thing.
And Archimedes had to save Wart from the barracuda eventually. Then, yes, you were correct. He was slow in coming back, so he got his demerits where he had to go in and do all of these dishes. And I think it's hilarious how in the beginning, Merlin was like, don't have magic, you know, don't be spoiled by magic, and don't have magic make or do the work for you. And then what does Merlin do but set up this whole conveyor line of dishes stuff.
Just gonna make magic do the
so
dishes.
They can go and be squirrels.
Yeah.
The squirrel spit happens where female squirrel falls in love with male squirrel, both sides. And at first Merlin's like, ha 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 ha, it's hilarious, ha 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 ha.
He's like, that's how love works. He does the whole thing.
And then this older female squirrel comes up to Merlin and has the same thing, and all of a sudden Merlin's all done with it and met him and blah 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 blah.
Yes, pretty funny.
And then the young female squirrel saves Wart from the wolf that's kind of been following him since he was first going to get the arrow.
Yep.
It's a recurring background character.
Yep.
And then, all of a sudden, poof, he's a boy, and there's a choo, which is adorable.
That's about right. Yeah, that's pretty adorable.
And then they go back to the castle, and Merlin is upset because Wart is going to actually be able to be the squire. Before that, with the dishes, he was demoted from being the squire, and somebody else was going to be, but that other boy got sick, and so he's back to being a squire, so Merlin's pissed, and so Archimedes is like, well, I'll take on the training, and so let's go flying, and so that's where that went out, and they were learning how to fly, then this hawk came, and
the hawk.
chased them through the woods, where all of a sudden Wart, trying to escape from the hawk, went down a chimney covered in soot into Madame Mim's house, where all of a sudden there's a song and dance about how Madame Mim is just horrible and loves it. And then Merlin shows up, you hear the animosity, there's the wizard fight, which is fabulous.
Yes.
And then she all of a sudden loses. Spoilers. I mean, all of this is a spoiler.
Yeah.
And then I think it's hilarious because she's sick now, and that's the end of her part in the movie.
Yeah, and she's just done, I guess.
Yep. And then Ward is going to go to London to go be the squire. Merlin is still pissed, so he blows himself to Bermuda. And correct. Then Archimedes and Wart go with the two gentlemen to London, where exactly what you said happens. They're watching the tournament. After the joust, the guys fall off the horse and go after each other with swords. He's like, I forgot Kay's sword. His name's Kay.
Oh, there we go.
And then he goes to the inn. The inn's closed. Archimedes is the one that notices the sword, saying, what about that sword over there in the cemetery? They go over to this now, dark, grown over, ignored area. And angels sing as he reaches for it. And then Archimedes is like, wait, no, please don't touch that. It's making noises. And he's like, but Kay's got to have a sword. And then pulls it out and then runs over. And they're like, this ain't my sword. And then they see the inscription on there. It's like, it's the sword in the stone. The sword in the stone? It can't be. But look, it is.
Right.
Hold everything. There's your verbatim. So everybody goes back to the stone. They re-put the sword in. Everybody tries to be like, well, anybody can pull it once it's been pulled. And then like 4 guys get on it at the same time, try pulling it out, and nothing happens. And then Wart goes back up and grabs it, and it's fine. Then all of a sudden he is trapped alone in the castle by himself with his crown and his big long cape. And he's like, I must escape. And he goes to all these different doors. And they're like, long live King Arthur. And then he's like blown back in. And then he goes to another door and same thing happens. And then all of a sudden a completely different voice goes, Merlin! That's supposed to be Wart, but it's not. And then Merlin comes back wearing Bermuda shorts. Ha ha, funny.
Yep.
And then he's like, oh, this is what you were so important about. Well, I'm going to teach you how to be king. And then it does a slow pan out while he's talking about, I'm going to teach you how to do this and this and this and this. And then music kicks on and you're done.
And they talked about what the shape of this table would be, which is kind of funny.
So
yeah,
that is the full movie as quickly as I could make it.
Yep.
Making sure I'm including all of the important points. Now, I know you had thoughts.
Yeah, there were things, and I kind of just been kind of peppering them throughout. Really, it's just boils down to the fact that I found that there were lots of like really neat and fun pieces in there that I liked, but there was an overall sense that it was just that movie ended. I felt kind of unfulfilled.
Well, and maybe this is because of the way that it was written. So it was originally written in 1938.
Yep.
Walt bought the rights to it in 1939, like the year after, because, I mean, reasons. And it's cool, and he wanted it.
Sure.
Because that's what Walt does, is he acquires things. And then he was going to put it into production, and World War II happened.
Yes.
When they finally got around to making the movie, I know that this is one of the few animated movies where they didn't start with storyboarding. They actually started with a screenplay. Okay. And then Walt came back and said, there's not enough, so beef it up. And so they did. So that could be where more substance about certain areas might have felt a little bit odd.
It definitely didn't have a consistent energy. Like that was definitely like the thing that I noticed about it. It was just like this. I just don't know what it's doing. It feels like it's kind of moving. Its entire vibe is kind of a moving target, which I found interesting.
Yeah. There's also some facts that we have about the movie, so let's just get into it.
Yeah.
So
one of the things, just talking about character stuff.
And these are all going to be jumping all over the place.
Yeah, this was just in the order that we saw them. Merlin, the character, was actually inspired by Walt Disney himself, like the way that you just kind of his kind
persona.
Of yeah.
Not the big beard, but they actually did draw his nose. His nose came from Walt as well.
Okay.
The grandfatherly figure, but the stern, get things done, must do with some humor and some joy to it.
Yeah.
But.
Yeah, but a little bit kind of strange. His own kind of eccentricity, sort of. So this is an interesting one for me. Was the way they had cast it originally? The actors for Archimedes and Merlin were the other way around, and so at some point they were struggling to get. And apparently they had like 60 different people,
70 different people read for the part of Merlin.
They just couldn't get that mixture of sort of doddering and kind of absent-minded, but also kind of brilliant, all in one, which is hard to do. And so they eventually got who they thought, and then they swapped Archimedes and Merlin, the voice actors, and so Merlin ended up being voiced by Carl Swenson,
who was from Little House of the Prairie.
Yes, and then Archimedes ended up being voiced by Junius Matthews,
who went on to be Rabbit in Winnie the Pooh.
That's correct.
And I love that you spelled Pooh with P-O-O.
P-O-O.
Forgot the H.
That's because I was typing quickly.
Yes, you were typing quickly.
The way I go. But yeah, so it was an interesting thing that they ended up having to do. And then another thing too is there's a sequence, and I remember this when we were going through it. Archimedes has a bit where he just goes on laughing for like way longer than he should ever do it.
It was when Merlin was trying to do do his flying contraption?
Yes. and it absolutely did not work.
And Archimedes is like, man, I'll never fly.
Yep.
Fly like a rock. And then he just goes into laughing, and he laughs for a full 20 seconds, which honestly, for a movie, especially back then, wasting 20 seconds of animation
of film is
for laughter?
Insanity. And like the fact that he laughs for that long and it doesn't feel like he's like having to make it go on, like it felt like he was like genuinely laughing. I'm just like, wow, this is interesting. It just keeps going on for a while. That was impressive. I was not expecting that to happen.
Yeah. In the Wizard's Duel, the animals that they changed into, they did 15 different animals that they switched out back and forth during that small little time. And I love that they kept the personas of Madame Mim and Merlin while they were changing out the different animals, the, characteristics, the coloring, the facial structures. I mean, a lot of things. The hair tuft.
The little tuft of hair. Yeah.
And the glasses.
Yep. No, it was you never questioned.
It is still known as one of the best character
animation sequences.
Yes.
Yeah, and their coloring too. Like you have the blue for Merlin and the kind of
pinky
purple color for Mim. It was pretty amazing. So this is kind of sad but funny. The original actor they had brought in to be Wart, Arthur, while they were going into production, he hit puberty.
Because the production took for 3 years.
3 years. So they were just like, they had the actor, then his voice changed, and so then they had to find another option. So the director ended up bringing in his 2 sons to voice the character, and that does not at all surprise me, because I noticed during the run of listening to it that the voice would get lower and higher throughout. Like at some point I'm like, okay, he sounds like he's 14.
And they also, whenever like Wart fell or anything, used the same reel, like not a laugh reel, but the same fall reel.
Yeah.
Every single time.
Similar.
Whoa!
Whoa! Yeah, exactly.
It was the same every single time.
Yeah.
I want to bring this one up. We don't have it there.
Sure.
But I think that. Or do you want me to talk about this one and you can talk about this one?
You go ahead and do.
Because this is more your thing.
That's a fair enough point. Okay, so in animation at the time, it
was called cleanup.
The cleanup, where they would actually transfer or trace over the animation to a new cell, or before it went to the new cell, before it went onto the animation cell, and it was time consuming, and so what they ended up doing, instead of doing the clean up process, they went to touch ups, and that was where the in-betweeners and the assistant people would go through and actually go over the original work of the original animator on the same piece of paper. Yeah,
touch-ups was created during the production of this film, so it saved time because you weren't wasting paper, you weren't wasting man hours in illustration. They were able to just go back in. It's probably why it has the feel of the scratches a little bit more.
It's a little bit scratchier, yeah.
But, it made it so much faster to be able to get things done as well, which
absolutely.
was good.
Absolutely.
Now, what I was going to steal from Ian before he could bring it up was the squirrel scene. So the squirrel scene was not supposed to happen like it did. And the whole reason it happened like it did was because of the voice of the female squirrel. And what I mean by that is she sounded so like, oh,
yeah,
and cute and everything, and they just decided that they were going to make this whole little love battle happen. It was originally supposed to be just the 2 squirrels trying to dodge the wolf that's already been following them throughout the rest of the movie, but instead, oh no, there's this whole song and dance, and there is this flirtation where, Wart's trying to run away, and this girl squirrel won't leave him alone, and she's so adorable. But it wasn't supposed to originally happen, so it's neat to see how they take inspiration and are willing to run with it and move it forward.
Right.
Instead of just
and it was definitely like a very again, it was one of those things where I was just like, I don't know why this is in this movie, but I like it. It's a nice scene. It was touching. It was cute, but also, I don't know why it's in this movie, but whatever. If that's what they were going for, awesome. Power to them to make it happen. But yeah, it was definitely I wasn't expecting it to happen in there. But yeah, it was a cute sequence. And this is a big one, especially for us, knowing if you've watched our podcast before
or listened,
however you consume our podcast, read it. I don't know. With Doritos. It is the first feature film at Disney to feature songs by the Sherman Brothers.
The first animated feature. Let's talk about that. Yeah. But yeah, so a lot of the songs in here, I mean, there's only a few that are recognizable to anybody, but they are pretty much almost all nonsense words.
Right.
But they were songs made by the Sherman Brothers, which were new and upcoming artists at the time.
Right.
And so it's really kind of neat to see what started them out as then, you watch them progress and everything else.
Right, and to be such a massive part of the... Yeah.
So this is also the only 1960s Disney animated movie to not have a platinum DVD, a sequel, a television show, or a live action. So far.
Of now,
there's technically one supposedly in the works, possibly coming to Disney Plus, but it's been in the works since 2015, and it was like
when I see it,
a year or a little bit over ago that they finally got a director.
Oh my god.
So
yeah. Poor sword in the stone, sword and the stone. I'm fine.
They're just gonna be separate for you
things now. They are two different items. They're just good buds. Yeah, they go on buddy adventures together. Yeah, it's a whole thing. So
wait, you got a friend in me? That two completely different things. But anyways, moving on.
Anyway, yes. So this was also the first Disney animated feature film to use the standard version of the Buena Vista distribution logo, which I can imagine when I put in my VHS tapes and the Buena Vista thing. It was not the first film to be distributed by Buena Vista
that was Sleeping
Pictures.
Beauty.
That was Sleeping Beauty, but they had their own separate
custom
thing that was I think they were just we gotta do something new, pretty thing will go here. That was kind of my understanding. So that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, so this was also the first Disney animated feature produced under a single director. Up until that time, they had 3 or 4 directors that they would be switching between.
Right.
So Wolfgang Reitherman was the only sole director on this film.
Which is interesting because I didn't know it was it went on that long. That they had a rotating little crew of directors that would work on these projects. It's amazing that they were as consistent as they were with that many different people in the kitchen. Though I mean, if the collaboration was good, there's nothing wrong with it. But very interesting.
So Mad Madam M got adopted to the Ducks universe, which I think is hilarious. And she's also the 4th boss in Castle of Illusions. So if you happen to be playing that since we talked about it, you might have recognized her there.
Yeah, absolutely. And then also you can find Merlin in the Kingdom Hearts franchise. So
which is another one that we had talked about.
Yeah, which is another little fun deal. So
and then Sword and Stone was the last film to be released while Walt Disney was still living. So I mean, I can see him going to the premiere and all of that, and so this would be the last animated premiere that he went to.
Yeah.
Oh,
that's a lot.
My heartstrings.
Yeah, and that was because the next one didn't come out until 1967, right?
Yep, after he died.
Yeah.
And that would be Jungle
Book. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. And then on top of that, another fun one, because we've kind of alluded to this before. We've talked about it a little bit, but some of you may know that Disney reuses some of their more complex animation sequences to make them to be able to reuse a sequence that you're not going to notice that they reused a specific kind of animation structure unless you're looking for it. And this movie was actually the origin material for many of those sequences that they used in later things. So you little specific. I'm trying to think of a good example.
Jungle Book, where the Wart is playing with the dogs when he first comes in, and they come over and they lick his face.
Oh,
and
yeah.
And then it's the same animation as Mowgli with the wolves when he comes back to the pack, and then they take him over at a rock and just showing love, and then he wipes off his face again, and same thing.
So they use little sequences like that. But other than that, that's basically. I mean, they do a couple of those, but I know there's a couple other films that they also did that with. So.
But Sword in the Stone is a classic as far as Arthurian legends go.
Yeah.
I would not necessarily call it a classic Disney because most people, this is not on their radar.
I think I mean it was one that I knew about, but I had definitely it definitely doesn't have the same kind of street cred that a lot of them do, which is interesting. It's in the fact that it was the last one that Walt Disney ever saw.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
But, I mean, I enjoy it. I love Mad Madam Mim.
Yes.
I've cosplayed her before. I went bouncing around Magic Kingdom as her before.
I think you actually were her in your profile photo on our website.
Possibly.
I think that's what that is. So.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It might be.
It's a whole thing.
You don't know.
It's a whole thing. So.
But we should totally do like a Mad Madam Mim and a Merlin, because you totally like, you have the ditzy wizard knowledgeful.
I could ramp that up.
You just need an owl.
Need an owl. We'll figure that out. We'll fix it in post.
On that note, this has been WD Carousel of Podcast. My name's Crystal.
And I'm Ian.
And we hope you have a great, big, beautiful tomorrow. Bye, everyone.